Would you look at that? Looks like that line is stretching all the way down Edgewood Avenue to Cortland. These folks seem awfully eager to see the Battle of Atlanta painting. Well, you won't catch Denmark Mitchell standing in that line, especially since they've been advertising it as the only Confederate victory ever painted. Since when? You see, I saw the Battle of Atlanta painting almost 5 years ago in 1886 in Minneapolis. It's impressive, quite a sight indeed. Now we are talking about a full panorama of the Battle of Atlanta. You are completely surrounded 360 degrees, and towering above you is 50 by 400 feet of landscape, battle, and sky. You feel like you are right in the middle of this historic battle. A battle that led to Sherman's march to the Atlantic and the subsequent end to the Civil War. A battle that the Confederacy did not win. So, why is the painting that I saw in Minneapolis being presented in such a different way from what these folks are about to see?
There's a lot of ways that you can learn about this painting, and the whole point of this is to think about this painting as an artifact. Okay, this is not just the military story of a battle. This is a story about an artifact that has changed over time and that people have seen differently over time, and it's a tool that we can use to help talk about how the Civil War has been remembered and misremembered across time. Our perspective is the sort of a holistic approach to the whole Civil War. For many years, this painting was a whites-only attraction. Okay, Grant Park was segregated. This was something that celebrated essentially a white version of history that was essentially not only about the Confederate bravery of the Confederate troops, but it was also about sort of a forgive and forget attitude between the North and the South. And that reconciliationist attitude really took place at the expense of African Americans. So this was at the height of Jim Crow, at the height of segregation. And so there's a great big part of that story that was just not there and was not being told. Now that's not told in this painting, but we can say, okay, well there's a reason for that. Why was that? And let's talk about that. And let's talk about, well, who was here? Yeah, there were no United States Colored Troop regiments in this battle, but that doesn't mean there weren't African Americans here. They were here. Some of them serving as cooks, a lot of them as stretcher bearers. So let's make sure that we talk about the truth of this thing. Okay, we can't ignore unpleasant issues. We need to talk about them and hear everybody's point of view on this thing.
I think one of the things that we started with as an institution was just really seeing that this is an artifact, and also an artifact that sort of represented a perspective. And so one of the things that I tried to do in the pieces that I created was to give you different perspectives on this particular artifact. Denmark Mitchell is a composite character. He's really made up of a lot of different African American intellectuals and thinkers and journalists of that time who were very concerned about what was happening in the country in terms of lost cause mythology and these sort of reunion narratives where, like, you know, the brothers from different sides fighting this battle together and they're all noble and righteous. And so they were writing criticisms about this very early on. And so Denmark sort of represents that perspective and how the Cyclorama was, when it was in Atlanta, when it first came, was showing a problematic perspective on the Civil War.
This painting was made in 1886 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin by the American Panorama Company. There were 17 mostly German artists who painted this painting in Milwaukee, and they were definitely marketing it to northern audiences. So your big Midwestern cities, especially where there was a population large enough to sustain enough ticket holders, you know, to support an attraction like this, they are not going to pay to see a Confederate victory. They want to see a celebration of what their fathers did, you know, and what their families did. They want to see what happened in what they would call the late rebellion, and they want to see a Union triumph, and this was one of them. This was the IMAX theater of its time. This was the thing that just knocked people's socks off as entertainment. But then, give it about 4 or 5 years, by about 1890, there were so many of these things circulating around the United States, and they were so popular, they saturated the market. And pretty soon everybody been there, done that, got the t-shirt, the bottom drops out of the cyclorama market. When the cyclorama market goes bust in the north, we have a southern entrepreneur from Georgia by the name of Paul Atkinson who buys a couple of paintings sort of at fire sale prices in the north and calculates that he might be able to make some money off of them in the south. The only problem with that is that his white southern audiences, who were very much wanted to see a Confederate viewpoint and a lost cause celebrating the Confederate side, he didn't necessarily want to pay to see a Union victory. So he's got some marketing to do, right? So he's got to first of all pitch this as a Confederate victory, which he does, and then he also, just for good measure, makes a few little key changes in a few places in the painting. For example, he paints out some Confederate prisoners and has them painted in as fleeing Union soldiers. So just a little bit of marketing, and he wants to appeal to the Southern audience. Of course, the same thing happens in Atlanta as what happened in the North, which is there's not enough people to pay, there's not enough ticket payers to make the thing work, and it goes bust very quickly. All the changes but one that Atkinson made in the 1890s were restored back into the painting in the 1930s by artist Wilbur Kurtz, and he was using the original 1886 photographs to make those changes. So he did his best to bring it back to its 1886 appearance, but Wilbur Kurtz could not actually bring it back to its full appearance because the building that he was working in, the 1921 brick building in Grant Park, was physically not large enough for the painting. As a matter of fact, when the painting was put into the building in 1921, it had to be cut in order to fit in there. So they cut out a section in order to get it in the building. So what we have done in our larger building is to place back in two vertical sections, one of 22 inches wide, the other 54 inches wide, and restored those into the painting. We've also put back in 7 feet of missing sky that had been cut out incrementally during the painting's various moves. And we've also been able to extend the painting to its proper hyperbolic or curved shape, which explains why you're not seeing any wrinkles or undulations in the painting, because it's essentially tensioned or stretched properly, and that could not have happened in the Grant Park building, but we've been able to bring it back to 1886 as much as we can. In many ways, this is the story of how the United States and the South has remembered and misremembered the Civil War. It's in this artifact. We can help tell that story through using this artifact.
It is often said that history is written by those who are triumphant, but that just doesn't seem the case with the Civil War. So, I guess it's up to people like me to set the record straight. The pen is still the most powerful weapon there is.